Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Soebbing. Today we're going to do a quilting play-by-play to show you how I quilted our latest Stashing with Stephanie quilt, Zig Zag. This is going to be a very much a how do you accomplish it within the limitations of whatever long arm throat space that you are working with kind of a video, because I knew I wanted to kind of follow the zigzag of the block placement, but I also knew that I couldn't be like continuing the line. Like that's not practical to continue this line. So what I was doing is I actually quilted this entire row and this entire row separately. And then as I was coming together to hit everything, I made sure it was hitting in the same point. So we're gonna see how I did that, how I accomplished it, and just break it down in a way that makes it look like you did it with one giant continuous line, connecting everything when you just went row by row with what you had available to you. Now, if you're doing this on your home sewing machine, you are not going to have to worry so much about some of the considerations that I did doing it on the long arm, because you legit can just do a wavy line with a free motion foot or a walking foot, go straight to the center of the row and then work your way back out. But I'm going to show you how I did this with no thread breaks from side to side. And so that's super important. You don't want to have a ton of thread breaks within the middle of your quilt if you can avoid it. Sometimes it's not possible, but I'm going to show you how I did it by navigating this with no thread breaks to be able to create this look and give the illusion that we went straight from the top to the bottom throughout everything. So it's a fun one, and I think it will really kind of help you guys, because a lot of working on a long arm or just quilting in general, it's figuring out what is your path going to be in order to do it in the most efficient way and with the least amount of thread breaks, so that way you're able to create the look you want without wanting to pull your hair out while you're doing it, because I know that can be a little bit of a challenge sometimes. Before we get into that, I want to tell you a little bit about Stashing with Stephanie. If you are new here, it's a subscription club that we offer where we send you 10 fat quarters every month and a free pattern that has been inspired by that month's collection. Now, 10 fat quarters, that will maybe get you a crib quilt if you want to do that. But we also offer something called a finishing kit, and that includes the 5 fat quarters you didn't receive and enough for your background and your binding, so that way you are able to create the quilt as I designed it. So what I always do is I come up with a design that uses all 15 of the fabrics that are in the collection, and I try to use it to the best of that fabric's ability. So like this month, we had a lot of really light value prints, and so I used those in the center diagonal, and then we went to our medium value, and then finally ending up with our dark value, so that we have a clearly defined block that is contrasting really well with that lighter background, which that wouldn't have happened if we would have had some of these lighter prints with that. So I think I love it. I think it turned out really good. I really like how everything worked out, and I love also the quilting with this and how it accentuated everything. I don't always have a ton of time to like do what the quilt loves and will look great with, because usually I'm up on a deadline when I'm doing this, but it worked out really well. But a couple other bonuses you get if you join is you get first dibs on getting additional fabric, because we do sell out sometimes of fabric, and also you get access to all of our other Stashing with Stephanie patterns for free. It's over a $300 value at this point. And we also get a discount on my 2 Fat Quarter books, and that's Fat Quarter Patchwork Quilts and Fat Quarter Workshop. And that one, Fat Quarter Workshop, is a bestseller on Amazon. But if you get it from us, you better support us, because we only make a couple of cents if you buy it on Amazon. But if you get it from us, we get about half of that purchase price to help create new videos for you, help inspire you, and help you become a better quilter. Helps us keep the lights on, pay my team, all good things. So we love it when you get it from us. Plus I'll sign it for you, so that's always fun. If you sign up, you can do that over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. If you join before the end of September, your first bundle will ship around the 20th of October. And if you join October 1st or later, you are going to have to wait until about the 20th of November to get that first shipment notification, but you get access to your free patterns in the meantime, and your 20% off discount on previous Stashing with Stephanie lines. So you could get this quilt, for example, and get working on that while you wait for your first bundle, which I should probably also remind you all that if we've already shipped this out to our members, so if you join because you saw this video, you're not going to get this fabric in the mail, but we do have quilt kits available. And if you join first and then purchase the quilt kit on your second purchase, you will get that discount. So it's a great project to have. You can have the pattern for free if you join, and you can really work through that stash because we have just dozens of fat quarter patterns that you can work with. And you can do all that over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. All right, well, let's get into this. What I do is I put a GoPro on my handlebars on my long arm, and I'm going to watch it back with you, and I'm going to explain the decisions I'm making. But the very first thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to turn this quilt sideways because this is up and down here, but that's not how I quilted it. In order to be able to do this continually, the easiest way to do that is actually to quilt it on its side, because then I can go from one side to another instead of having to constantly be traveling or breaking thread. It just works sometimes a lot better to turn the quilt on its side, and then I had fewer rows to do because I had then only 5 passes instead of 6. So that always, in theory, takes the same amount of time, but in my brain, that's a better option. So I'm going to turn it sideways so that way you guys can see what it looks like as I'm quilting it. All right, so I pulled on screen the actual section. It's probably not the exact section, but this is pretty much what you're going to be seeing as I get started quilting here. And what I did first was I kind of came down here, and then I'm using my ruler base and a ruler to make my way across to get to the adjoining point here, because I found that if I started with the bottom of my block first, then I was able to kind of continue on into the next section, and it made it much more efficient to do one line rather than stop. So you can see I made it to the same adjoining corner here, and I started doing my wavy line, making my way up through the other points. Now you can see I've already quilted the top part, and so I came right up to the point where my previous quilting line was. You can kind of see an example of where that might land here, where it looks like it's all one line because I aimed for the same point of the square when I was starting and stopping, when I was doing this row, and when I was doing the row above. And so then when you look at it, when it's all finished, it looks done. And so then I just kept going down the area. So I just keep traveling across, again, focusing on doing these bottom points first. So here we have, I'm traveling again to get to the edge of where that bottom point is, again on the other side. And again, we're just trying to get this bottom corner of the square and then continue that line up and work our way across. This is going to make a little bit more sense as we fill in some more lines. And actually right here, I completely forgot that I was supposed to do this coordinating section on the last bit. And so what you see me do here is secure my edge of my quilt. And I like to do this, it sort of keeps the side of the quilt straight. Before I did this, I would always end up with wavy edges on my quilts. But now that I do it, I'm able to keep it nice and straight and square because I've sort of put everything in where it needs to be. I do that in the area that's going to be covered by the binding so you don't see it later, but it really makes a big difference. So here I remembered, oh shoot, I was supposed to quilt this, and I went back and did that. And because we don't want to have a ton of issues in the middle, you're going to want to make sure that you're coming across to the edge of the quilt to pull those threads. That way you don't have errant threads that you have to tie off on the inside. All right, so now we're going to make our way back across to the next row. And here we're going to start on the edge, and we're going to go for that second set of triangles, those half square triangles. So we're going to start off in the corner and get our thread secured and bring that bobbin up to the top. And then again, we're just going to start doing the wavy line down, and we're going to travel until we have our second set here. So the reason why we're traveling is because we want to be able to make our way across to the next part, because I can't go down any further. I can only quilt one block at a time with the space that is included in my long arm. So I always use glide thread. I use the 40 weight poly to do that because I can travel over stitches like that multiple times without it looking thick and bulky. I used to use 100% cotton thread when I was quilting, but the more I started realizing that traveling was really important to be able to create looks like this without having lots of stops and starts, the more I realized that we needed a thread that wouldn't build upon each other, and glide is one of those. So now you can see I've made my way back up to the top, and I'm traveling until I can get to that next down section here. And again, I'm stopping and starting here right where a line is already there. So we'll do some close-up pictures so that way you can see exactly what that looks like. But if you are aiming when you're hitting that top part for wherever you stopped with the wavy line from above, when everything is said and done, it is going to look like you had a continuous wavy line, even though we just quilted one row at a time. So again, traveling until I hit the next set of wavy lines like this. And we're going to work our way to the edge of the quilt. So you're going to see me continue to do this, where we're going to keep working up one at a time. And then eventually we're going to have to start by traveling in to get to here. But for the next one, we're going to hit the middle. And for this one, we don't have a half square triangle that we're going to be working with. We're just going to be kind of aiming for the middle. And I found, like, when I was doing this, that these lines kind of got a little bit wavier because I didn't have that direct center line that I was aiming for. But as long as you're kind of evenly there, you're fine. And you can see I'm kind of also aiming for those points to go in between. So I get as wavy as I want in between, but I'm always aiming for those joins when I go through. And again, we're going to travel over. We don't have as far to travel this time because we're getting closer to that center. And then you're able to wiggle and wavy line up. Again, making sure to try to hit when we hit the top to connect with the same wavy line from above. So again, it's not the same line. We're not quilting it all in one go, but it's going to visually look like it's the same wavy line, which is really, really awesome. And one note, I pressed all of my seams open for this quilt. I started pressing my seams open when I started long arm quilting because I realized that I was able to do a lot more as a long arm quilter with seams pressed open because I can get right into those points without it being too thick and causing problems with the machine or skip stitches or anything like that because it's super, super flat. And you can see I'm doing kind of a modified stitch in the ditch because there is no ditch, there's no low side, like when you press a seam under. What I'm doing is I'm stitching right next to where that seam allowance is, and you can see I'm going over it several times. I'm not having any problems with anything popping out or it being unstable. It works really, really well. And really, when you're stitching in the ditch in a traditional sense where you press your seam over, you're still stitching right next to the seam anyway. You're not going right down the center of that seam because it's not possible to do that. It's flipped over. So for this, I'm again just stitching right next to that seam, and I am going over that thread, and I'm able to do it because everything is pressed super, super flat. All right, so we're going to start another one here, and now we are all the way up to our corner. So this is kind of the fun one because we get to zigzag our way down until we hit our center. And then you get to go right back up the other side, which is very, very fun. So at this point is when we also then have to start traveling vertically. So you can see I don't have another point here to just keep on going. So what I'm doing instead is I'm using my ruler to be able to, again, stitch right next to that seam and go straight down the side. And I used a kind of an off-white that matched really well with my background, and it really kind of hides, even with all those stitches that get stitched on top of each other, you really can hide it very well. And it doesn't look overwhelming at all. Like, you can't really tell that there's thread there. It just kind of hides itself. All right, so now we've gone down to the point of the other one, and we're going to travel vertically again so we can get to the top of that point. So there still will be some traveling horizontally once we get to our next parts. But at this point, we want to, whenever we're done with that center pairing for the zigzag, you're going to go up and down as well. So that way you can get to the next point without having to break any of those threads. So this is like the beautiful mind mess of trying to figure out what's my best path. And I will fully admit to you guys that this was not my first pass that I was filming on. It was my fourth pass. It took me that many to like really get it down, really figure out, okay, this is the best way. And I always wait until I feel like I've got it figured out to do this filming, because I want to make sure that I'm showing you guys the best possible option for that. And it isn't always, you know, the first one right out of the gate. So it might take you a minute to figure out what's my best path to work on something like this. All right, so now we're gonna start another row or another pass. And I'm starting off on the edge there. And now I'm gonna travel in. I'm gonna use that ruler, and you have to have the ruler base or the ruler flop all over, and we're gonna stitch in to the top of the next section. And then again, we're gonna do our wavy line down to center, and we're gonna do a wavy line back up, following the center of those spaces. And again, every time I hit that top, I'm trying to hit right where my previous wavy line was, so it looks continuous. Now we're gonna travel and across, and now we're gonna travel down again. And when you're traveling down, you wanna make sure that you are trying to stay on the same stitching line that you had before, so it appears as though you had one stitching line and not a bunch all over the place. I have a couple of places where I didn't accomplish that, and it does look okay. It's not the end of the world, but it's best if you can make that work. All right, so now we're gonna start traveling up again. We traveled in just a little bit, so that way we could continue on. And again, we're always changing at that center of the block, but we're getting towards the end here. We're almost to the edge of where we're going to be. All right, so again, we're gonna travel horizontally here, and then we're gonna travel vertically one more time so we can get that final zigzag before we are done. And you can see how this works really well when I am stitching it this way. But if I were going this way and trying to do all of these, then I would constantly be like trying to figure out where am I supposed to go, and which direction am I doing, and like there would be lots of up and down throughout in order to make this work. This way I'm able to really clearly use the quilting to help accentuate the pointiness of the zigzag, which I always love to do. I like the quilting to help accentuate the fabric and the design. And so anytime I can help elevate the design with stitching, I am all for that. And I love to challenge myself to do that. All right, so we are ready to start another row. And this time we're again gonna start off to the side, and we're gonna stitch over now to our second square so we can start going down this wavy line. So for me, this was 7 passes per row, which took me about 20-25 minutes per pass to do once I got my rhythm figured out and once I knew where I was going. It's always a little slower in the beginning because you're not going to do things as efficiently as you could once you figure out that path. But to me, that's totally worth it because it's going to take a lot less time to do 7 passes going across than it would to have lots of stops and starts every single time you wanted to do that. It's like if I had to stop and start here and then stop and start here and then do the same thing every single time, that would take so long, and you would have little bits of thread hanging out unless you bury all your threads, which takes an inordinate amount of time. So to me, this is definitely the better way to go. You just have to kind of work on traveling and trying to do that where it is not so visible, where we're going right on the same line, and then also working to make sure that we are hitting right in those corners so that way the lines look continuous when you are looking at it from a texture perspective. Because when you look at this from above, you see this texture. You do not see that this was quilted separate from this. It's almost impossible to tell when you're just looking at it from a textural point of view. All right, so we're going to travel down again here. And I always stop my needle completely when I'm moving my ruler around. It's just too easy to accidentally get off and then things don't look so good. So I'm always turning that needle on and off as I'm going. And I always stop with it down as well. All right, we're gonna hit our corner, go out to the edge, and then we're gonna travel out to the edge again. We do not wanna have those those thread tails where we don't want them. It's just so much easier to just sew them up in the binding later on. Actually, that's a bit of a lock, isn't it? It is. So we have to travel up first. And it's totally okay to pause and like take your bearings when you're working on this stuff too. I mean, it's inevitable. You need to know where you're at and where you're going. And if it takes you a minute to figure that out, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. All right, so you can see really clearly here where that textured line ended, and I really kind of started right in that same spot. And it really just brings it up to the next level there. All right, so here's where we're gonna just travel off to the edge here. All right, we're gonna pull that thread up and then we have one more row to do, or pass rather. All right, so we have a lot of traveling in this final one because we are just hitting this little section on both of those blocks. So we gotta come in, you can see that textured line above, and we're gonna match that and stitch down to where our corners are of our units for our block. And then we're gonna travel over to the edge of the next block. Again, stitching right next to that seam. And now we're gonna go down, traveling again, trying to keep on top of those lines if possible. We're going to travel again horizontally until we can hit the center where we still have left to quilt. All right, there we are. And it's important to notice that in the bottom, we haven't quilted that yet, right? So we don't have anything to match up yet because there's nothing down there yet. We haven't gotten that far. But we will be matching it when we start the bottom. We're going to connect it with what we've previously quilted. All right, you guys should have the drill by now. We're going to stitch horizontally and then stitch vertically. Now we're going to travel over until we hit this section again for the top. Get that real quick, stitch to the end, and we are going to be done. It goes really, really well, and it goes pretty quick. And at this point, I definitely pulled over a team member, and I was like, do you think I should go in between all of these two? Because I really do like a dense quilting. Like, this is a little loose for me. It's actually a lot loose for me. But it would have doubled my time because I would have had to have gone through everything a second time. I would have had to do all the travels again. And we were trying to make sure that we got this quilt out by a certain point for all of our Stashing with Stephanie subscribers. And I didn't think that we would be able to meet that 5 o'clock deadline if I had also gone through and filled everything in. But I do think that it looks really good. It definitely succeeds at drawing the eye and drawing focus to the pattern itself. So I really like how it turned out. I think it looks great, but that's just life. Sometimes you don't have all the time in the world to get a quilt done because it's for a gift, or, you just need to get it done before a holiday or something. And sometimes you do have to settle for not doing it as dense as you would, but still close enough together to be able to hold everything together and make sure that that quilt lasts for time, which this definitely does. It accentuates what's going on. And again, if I had all the time in the world, I would 100% have gone back through all of these, and that would have been a process. Again, I would have started here, I would have gone halfway through, and I would have made my way across and come here and came up or actually here you could travel all the way. And I would have just kept going through that same process until I had made my way through to the end. And it's really fun. I love doing stuff like this. The wavy line is such a versatile quilting stitch that you can make it work for just about anything. If you want to learn more about how to quilt your quilts on your home sewing machine or your long arm, we have an Intro to Free Motion Quilting course. What we do is we have 4 stencils that teach you the muscle memory of the stitch. One of them is a wavy line. Then we expound upon that and we learn how to take what we learned with the stencil and customize it to different applications. And you're actually doing a quilt as you go if you're doing it on your home sewing machine, or you're working on it as you go on your long arm. And so when you are done, you actually have a finished quilt to show off. It's not like a bunch of random samples that you're not sure what to do with. You have an actual quilt, and we have quilt kits for that. So definitely go check that out. If that's something that you're interested in and you want to learn more about, you can follow along with all the lessons, and when you're done, you have that completed quilt to show off. So it's really fun. I think it's a great course. We've heard from a lot of you guys that you really learned a lot doing it, because I don't think you need to know a million stitches to be able to create different looks in each of your quilts and be able to finish them yourself. I love the feeling of being hands-on with a quilt from start to finish and finishing it myself as well with the quilting. So if that's something you want to learn more about, definitely go check out that series. All the videos are free. The pattern and the pattern is free if you get a quilt kit to go with that. And then we have a stencil pack as well, which you'll want to have to go along with that. But check out Stashing with Stephanie. This pattern is free if you are a member, or if you join, grab it on your second purchase and you'll be able to get it for free. You also would get 20% off the quilt kit and any additional fabric you want. So if you want to pick up 4 yards for the backing, you get that at 20% off. You also have access to all of our previous Stashing with Stephanie patterns for free, and you get, I forget the percentage discount. We'll put it in the side. There's a little graphic that pops up. But you also get a special discount on my Fat Quarter books, Fat Quarter Patchwork Workshop, and Fat Quarter Workshop and Fat Quarter Patchwork Quilts. I was combining the 2 titles, but it is dozens of quilt patterns. So if you've got a stash you want to work through, like that is a good way to do it. Because you can get access to all of those patterns, and it is awesome. And just one last reminder, because we have people who miss it every single month. If you sign up by the end of September, your first bundle will ship around the 20th of October. If you sign up October 1st or later, you're looking at a ship date of November 20th, around then, for your first bundle to go out. So that is because this is a big production. We have more than 700 members. It takes us about 3 weeks from start to finish to get everything cut, because we are talking about like almost 8,000 fat quarters that we cut, fold, package, and ship out to you. That's a big deal. It's a lot to do. And then we release everything to our members between like the 25th and 27th of each month, and give them a 24-hour head start so they can get, if they would like to, they don't ever have to, but if they would like to get the 5 fat quarters of the collection that they did not receive, they can get that, plus your background and binding, so you can turn your bundle into a quilt kit. So we give them a head start on that. And we do have fabrics that occasionally sell out because people absolutely love that one. They need to have it, and everybody wants it for backing, and it just goes. And so we want to make sure that they all have the same opportunity, which means we have to ship it and release it all at the same time. So that's why there is that delay, but you get access to your patterns right away for free. You get access to discounted fabric for previous Stashing with Stephanie lines for free. So if you love this, and you sign up because you love this quilt, this is not going to come to you in the mail. We've already shipped this out to our subscribers, but we do have kits available that you can get if you join because you saw this video. And just sign up first, and then on your second purchase, go through and grab a kit, and you'll be able to get that discount, because our website will know you're a member, and you'll get all the goodies. All right, well, thank you for following along with us. You can do all those good things over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. And until next time, happy quilting.